In the arid sprawl of southern New Mexico, where the Chihuahuan desert stretched endlessly under a relentless sun, Maria Alvarez arrived with a suitcase of dreams and two daughters clinging to her hands. At 28, Maria had fled Guatemala's violence and poverty, chasing the promise of a better life in the United States. Her daughters, Sofia, 10, and Anna, 8, were her anchors, their wide eyes filled with hope as they crossed the border legally on a family visa in 2022. The small town of Mesilla, with its dusty adobe homes and quiet mesas, seemed like a place to start over. Maria found work quickly, a morning shift cleaning rooms at a motel off Interstate 10, and evenings waitressing at a diner serving truckers and locals. Her hands were calloused, her days long, but every dollar she earned was a brick in the foundation of her daughter's future. She enrolled them in school, where their broken English slowly improved, and she smiled through exhaustion, determined to give them the stability she never had. But the dream came with a shadow. Maria's husband, Carlos Alvarez, had crossed the border with them. A man whose charm had once won her heart in their village near Quetzaltenango. Back then, he'd been a mechanic with a quick laugh and promises of a shared future. But in Mesilla, Carlos changed. The pressure of odd jobs, construction gigs that paid under the table, long stretches of unemployment, soured him. His temper, once a rare spark, became a volcano. Behind the thick walls of their rented adobe home on a dirt road outside town, Carlos's fists found Maria's body. He'd lash out after drinking, blaming her for their struggles, for the bills piling up, for the way the locals looked at him. Maria, desperate to protect Sofia and Anna, hid the bruises under long sleeves and forced smiles. She'd sing lullabies to the girls at night, their small bodies curled against hers, whispering promises that everything would be okay. Sofia, sharp and observant, noticed things Anna was too young to understand. The way their mother flinched when Carlos raised his voice, the muffled arguments through the walls. At school, Sofia's teachers praised her drawings, vivid sketches of Guatemalan jungles and bright flowers, but lately her art had darkened, jagged lines, a faceless man looming over a cowering figure. Anna, more carefree, clung to her mother's warmth, unaware of the danger brewing. Maria confided in no one, not her co-workers at the diner, nor the motel manager, who slipped her extra shifts. Shame and fear kept her silent. Carlos's threats were a constant weight. "Leave me, and I'll take the girls. You'll never see them again." Maria knew he meant it. He'd spoken of his cousins in Juarez, smugglers who moved things across borders, drugs, money, people. She couldn't risk it. By early 2025, Maria's resolve hardened. She'd heard about a women's shelter in Las Cruces, a place that could help her escape. She began saving cash in a hidden coffee tin, a few dollars at a time, and contacted a lawyer through a free legal aid clinic. The lawyer, a kind woman named Elena, explained that Maria could file for a protective order and fight for full custody. The hearing was set for August 10th, 2025, a date Maria circled in her mind like a beacon. She didn't tell Carlos, but he sensed something shifting. Her silences grew defiant, her eyes no longer downcast. The night before the hearing, Maria tucked her daughters into bed, whispering that soon they'd be free. She didn't know Carlos had overheard her on the phone with Elena, his rage simmering as he planned to stop her for good. On August 9th, 2025, the air in Mesilla was thick with summer heat, even at midnight. The adobe house was quiet, the girls asleep in their shared bedroom. Maria sat at the kitchen table, folding laundry, her mind racing with the next day's hearing. She'd rehearsed her testimony, detailing years of abuse, punches to her ribs, slaps that left her ears ringing, threats that kept her awake at night. She didn't hear Carlos enter the kitchen, his footsteps soft on the tile. He'd been drinking, the smell of cheap tequila on his breath. When he spoke, his voice was low, accusing her of betraying him, of planning to steal his daughters. Maria stood, her heart pounding, and told him she was done. The word divorce slipped from her lips, a declaration of freedom she'd never dared speak aloud before. Carlos's face twisted. In a flash, his hands were around her throat, squeezing with a force that silenced her screams. Maria clawed at him, her nails digging into his arms, but he was stronger, fueled by years of pent-up control slipping away. The struggle was brief. The kitchen table knocked askew, a glass shattering on the floor. Maria's body went limp, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Carlos stood over her, panting, the reality of what he'd done sinking in. The girls slept through it, unaware that their world had shattered. Carlos moved quickly, his mind shifting to survival. He wrapped Maria's body in a blue tarp from the shed, securing it with duct tape. The desert was vast, he thought, a place to hide his sin. He dragged the bundle to his pickup truck, the scrape of tarp on gravel echoing in the stillness. At 3 a.m., Carlos drove into the Chihuahuan desert, the truck's headlights cutting through the dark. He chose a remote spot off a dirt road, where mesquite bushes and cacti stood like silent sentinels. He heaved Maria's body over an embankment, letting it roll into a dry wash, hidden by brush. He covered it with loose dirt, confident the desert would keep his secret. But he hadn't counted on Javier Ruiz, a ranch hand who worked a nearby cattle spread. Javier had set up trail cameras to monitor coyotes preying on livestock. One camera, perched on a juniper tree, captured the grainy image of Carlos's truck, the timestamp reading 3:47 a.m., and the unmistakable drag marks leading to the embankment. Javier wouldn't check the footage until the next day, but the desert had already begun to betray Carlos. Back at the house, Carlos cleaned the kitchen, mopping the floor and hiding the broken glass. He woke Sophia and Anna at dawn, telling them their mother had left for an early shift. His voice was calm, but his hands shook as he packed their bags. He told the girls they were going to visit family in Juarez, a lie to buy time. By noon on August 10th, as Maria's lawyer waited at the courthouse, Carlos and the girls were crossing the border into Mexico. He drove to a cousin's safe house in Juarez, a cramped apartment used by smugglers. Carlos planned to disappear deeper into Mexico, maybe even back to Guatemala, where he could blend into the chaos. But Maria's absence was already raising alarms. Her co-workers at the diner noticed she didn't show up, and her lawyer called the police when Maria missed the hearing. The Mesilla police, initially treating it as a missing person case, began asking questions. The investigation moved swiftly once Maria's co-workers and lawyers shared their concerns. By August 11th, Mesilla police interviewed neighbors who mentioned Carlos's odd behavior, loading his truck in the middle of the night, his sudden departure with the girls. The breakthrough came when Javier Ruiz, the ranch hand, checked his trail camera footage. The images were chilling. Carlos's truck, the tarp, the drag marks. Javier called the police, who contacted the New Mexico State Police and the FBI, given the cross-border implications. The desert site was cordoned off, and on August 12th, search teams found Maria's body in the wash, still wrapped in the tarp. The autopsy confirmed strangulation, the bruising on her neck a grim map of her final moments. The case was now a homicide, and Carlos was the prime suspect. The FBI issued an alert for Carlos and the girls, suspecting he'd fled to Juarez. Working with Mexican authorities, they tracked him to the safe house, but Carlos was one step ahead, moving through smuggling routes toward Chihuahua City. The girls, confused and scared, clung to each other, asking for their mother. Sophia, sensing something was wrong, began hiding small notes in her pockets, scribbled pleas for help, a habit from her school art classes. Meanwhile, in Mesilla, Maria's story spread. Her co-workers organized a vigil, holding candles outside the diner, their signs reading "Justice for Maria." The community's grief fueled the investigation, with tips pouring in about Carlos's abusive history. The girls' salvation came through an unexpected source, an art therapy program at a Juarez community center. A smuggler's wife, uneasy about Carlos's story, had enrolled Sofia and Ana in the program to keep them occupied. During a session, Sofia's drawings caught the therapist's eye: violent images of a man choking a woman, a desert grave, a blue tarp. Ana's simpler sketches showed a truck driving away, a stick figure mother left behind. The therapist, alarmed, contacted local police, who alerted the FBI. The drawings were a roadmap to the truth, linking directly to the trail camera evidence. On August 15th, Mexican authorities raided a safe house in Chihuahua City, finding Sofia and Ana, but no Carlos. The girls were taken into protective custody, their notes and drawings sent to the FBI as evidence. Carlos, now a fugitive, slipped deeper into Mexico, relying on his cousin's network. But the net was tightening. Interpol issued a red notice, and Maria's story hit national news, her face plastered on TV screens across the U.S. and Mexico. The community center therapist, a Guatemalan immigrant herself, became a local hero, testifying about the girls' drawings. The FBI traced Carlos's phone pings, narrowing his location to a border town near Durango. Maria's lawyer, Elena, worked tirelessly with the girls' maternal grandmother in Guatemala, preparing for their return. The investigation revealed Carlos's pattern of abuse, corroborated by Maria's co-workers who'd seen her bruises. Every piece of evidence, the trail cam, the drawings, the body, pointed to a calculated murder, not a spur-of-the-moment act. By August 20th, 2025, Carlos was running out of places to hide. The FBI, working with Mexican federal police, had tracked him to a dusty cantina in Peril, a border town known for smuggling routes. On August 21st, as Sofia and Ana were flown back to New Mexico to reunite with their grandmother, authorities closed in. The standoff unfolded under a blistering sun. Carlos holed up in a rundown motel, armed with a stolen pistol. He'd learned of the Interpol notice and knew extradition was inevitable. For hours, negotiators tried to talk him down, broadcasting Sofia's voice over a loudspeaker, her plea for him to surrender breaking through his defiance. At 3 p.m., exhausted and cornered, Carlos dropped the gun and walked out, hands raised, the desert dust swirling around him. The extradition process began immediately, with Carlos detained in Mexico pending transfer to the U.S. In Mesilla, Sofia and Ana were embraced by their grandmother, who'd flown from Guatemala to take custody. The girls, though traumatized, found solace in their art, their drawings now filled with images of their mother's smile, the Guatemalan hills they'd left behind. The community rallied around them, raising funds for their education and therapy. Maria's vigil grew into a movement, with activists pushing for stronger protections for immigrant women facing domestic violence. The diner where Maria worked hung a photo of her behind the counter, a reminder of her warmth and resilience. In court, Carlos faced a murder charge with special circumstances, the prosecution building a case around the trail cam footage, the girls' drawings, and the autopsy report. The trial, set for early 2026, promised to be a reckoning, with Sofia's testimony, delivered through her art, expected to sway the jury. Elena, the lawyer, ensured Maria's story was told, her voice echoing through the evidence. The grandmother, now raising Sofia and Ana in a new home in Las Cruces, taught them to plant marigolds, a nod to Maria's love of flowers. Under the New Mexico stars, the girls began to heal, their mother's dream of a better life carried forward in their courage. Carlos, awaiting trial, would face justice, but Maria's legacy, her love, her fight, shone brighter than the desert sun.